Welcome back, fellow Judavision subscribers. Welcome to the truth. As you know, I'm Judah, author of the best-selling Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals book series, only available on Amazon.com. And a lot has happened since we uploaded that last crazy video about Henry Wallace and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the president who put the pyramid on the $1 bill, and how we learned that the Great Seal of the United States, the supposed Great Seal of the United States, is actually the logo for the Theosophy movement, and Theosophy itself meaning becoming God, and the amazing things we've learned on Judavision that people who haven't watched the Vegas Exposed series wouldn't even understand. Welcome back to the truth, people. A lot has happened since that last episode, and a lot we can't talk about. I've had many requests privately and openly in the comments sections to approach this latest so-called terrorist attack, and we're not going to talk about that too much because it appears we are, as I say in my books, in the twilight of truth. As people began to suggest that I talk about that New Zealand incident, and I began to hit the airwaves and all over the internet. A lot of truth to stuff, a lot of not truth, a lot that we can't decide because these people who were talking about that incident, their channels were coming down as quick as they begin to speak of them. So we're just going to stay away from that altogether, and we'll let the course of whatever's happening there take its course. But I'd like for people who've been watching the show, that have watched the Vegas Exposed series, whose eyes are open, to understand the many correlations that we could make in this scenario. And that's all I'm going to say. In this episode, I talked about how amazing it was that I was compelled to go to the scene of the crime at Mandalay Bay, where that terrible shooting took place in front of the Luxor. And I've spoke about the books that I'd written up to that point, outlining the Russell family, the family who formed the Order of Skull and Bones on Yale University. And now we're seeing Yale back in the news, along bunched up with USC and a lot of these other universities. And they're starting to lose credibility as far as their admissions process. And I'd like to point out something. I don't want to get into this too deeply, but obviously the people who've read my books, the Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals series, and on, they understand already that it shouldn't be these families who are paying off these institutions that we're looking at, that we're publicizing. These are, again, an insane red herring, when indeed it should be us questioning the institutions themselves, okay? It's amazing, but we're going to move forward here because we've got an amazing show today. And as I read to you the first chapter from my book, Back Upright, titled The Michelangelo Code, I'm going to flash on the screen the imagery which is linked to in my book. So in my digital books, there's actually imagery along the way because I like to make my point through words and through imagery, which is very, very powerful, and a lot of it has to do with architecture and things throughout the ages, so it's important to the narrative. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read from the digital book, and I'm going to show you the imagery that's provided along the way in the book, and then at the end of this first chapter, I'm going to show you an amazing revelation that really blew my mind. And as you know from watching the series, it would take a lot to blow my mind because you've made these discoveries along the way with me. But after I found that the dollar folded up into a satanic altar, and that the Taco Bell Illuminati campaign commercials is what exposed that, and the black magic and the mirrors and Delano Tower and all these amazing things, I actually made this amazing revelation in my first chapter of my book, because I asked this burning question which opens my book, which is, are the giants already back? And as any Christian knows, in the Bible it says that when Christ comes back, it'll be as it was in the days of Noah. And as we know from Genesis 6, that there were giants in the earth in those days. And again, I don't want to get too far into the Bible because it'll run a lot of people off. We'll let the context through the history that's unfolding before our eyes take people back to the Bible. But I'm going to read you this first chapter, and then I'm going to show you this amazing answer to this burning question that might get you interested in this book too. And today's show is loosely titled Judah and the Giants. And as you'll see, this first chapter in my book, Back Upright, Skull and Bones, Knights Templar, Freemasons in the Bible, Sacred Scroll of Seven Seals, Book 2, which stands alone. All my books stand alone. You'll see that this amazing thing happened after I made all of these discoveries, which was an amazing confirmation of my work. And I'm going to begin to read to you, and again, I'll start showing you imagery as I read. And my first chapter in the book Back Upright is called the Michelangelo Code. Many consider the Sistine Chapel on which Michelangelo toiled for 4 years in the early 16th century to be a bridge between the Roman Catholic Church and the Jewish faith. According to a book titled The Sistine Secrets, Unlocking the Codes in Michelangelo's Defiant Masterpiece, written by Rabbi Benjamin Bleck and Roy Dolliner, the poses of the subjects in Michelangelo's paintings represent Hebrew letters. For example, the two claim that the figures of David and the giant Goliath form the shape of the letter Gimel, which symbolizes Gevurah or strength. As you can imagine, there is much controversy surrounding these hidden clues, quote-unquote. But one clue for which no such argument can be made is hidden in Michelangelo's depiction of the Cumaean Sibyl. In this work, Michelangelo added the infamous sixth knuckle to the muscular lady giant's left fist. The verse below will explain the meaning of this beast of burden's muscular man-arms, large stature, and extra digits. It is not important that you memorize the information below, just enjoy reading about the giants in our ancient past and absorb the bold-lettered information, which outlines the fact that Michelangelo's Sibyl was a giantess with 6 fingers and 6 toes. I read to you 2 Samuel 21, the King James Version. And there was again a battle in Gob with the Philistines, where Elhanan, the son of Jerogorim, a Bethlehemite, slew the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And there was yet a battle in Gath, where was a man of great stature, that had on every hand 6 fingers, and on every foot 6 toes, 24 in number, and he also was born to the giant. And when he defied Israel, Jonathan the son of Shemaiah, the brother of David, slew him. These 4 were born to the giant in Gath, and fell by the hand of David, and by the hand of his servants. As you can see, the giants described in the scripture above share this genetic trait of having 6 fingers with Michelangelo's Sibyl. Polydactylism, also known as polydactyly or hyperdactyly, is interestingly a congenital physical anomaly in humans. It is not considered a defect. The genetic anomaly is surfacing more and more among humans. As a matter of fact, look at these images in which you will see a family of 14 who were all born with 6 fingers on each hand. These Nephilim, giant, traits are returning to the genescape of the human race, and, save for the extra fingers, most of these hands look as normal as yours and mine. This is not to say that these people are bad any more than Shaq is bad simply for being a giant, even if he is a braggadocious Freemason. These are merely genetic carryovers from the past which are clearly explained by the Bible. The first half of the title of Michelangelo's 6-knuckle painting of this Sibyl, Cumaean, shouts that she is in fact a giantess. In countless ancient accounts, these Sibyls were said to be a tribe of women warriors who were genetic leftovers from a tribe of ancient giants. According to 1st century historian Diodorus Siculus, Library of History 4, 21.5, Heracles then moved on from the Tiber, river of Rome, and as he passed down the coast of what now bears the name of Italia, Italy, he came to the Cumaean plain. Here, the myths relate, there were men of outstanding strength, the fame of whom had gone abroad for lawlessness, and they were called gigantes. These gigantes are giants. That the Greek account above mentions that these Cumaean giants were famous corresponds with the biblical record below, which also clearly explains the earliest appearance of these so-called giants. In Genesis 6:4 is mentioned, King James Version. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children unto them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. We've since named multiple professional sports teams in honor of these ancient quote-unquote gigantes. For example, the New York Giants. Yale University, the sinister home of the Order of Skull and Bones, created American football as we know it, which explains a lot. There will be much more on the Order of Skull and Bones later. This ideal will come into better focus for us then. Curiously, California even has a baseball team named for the parents of these so-called giants, the Anaheim Angels. Haven't you ever wondered why that is? Remarkably, these giants too have become quite world renowned for their large stature, just as those mentioned in the biblical account above. California has even named their greatest city after these angelic beings, Los Angeles, the city of angels. If you think that all of this giant talk is crazy, you'd be wrong. Giant may not mean what you think. The Bible recorded that Goliath was only 6'9", and the Hebrews were generally short. This means that Shaquille O'Neal is 4 inches taller than was Goliath. It also remains that Yao Ming would tower a full 9 inches above the biblical giant. Many translations of the Bible have edited Goliath's height to make it seem that he was taller than he really was in order to discount the fact that the Nephilim genes are again manifesting today. We all may have these genes encoded in our DNA. The two evil-looking angels who appear to be making the infamous so-called rude gesture behind the back of the gigantic Sibyl in Michelangelo's famous painting are telling now that we know that the giants were mutations of the combined genes of humans and fallen angels or demons. Shown in this slide, it appears that these two so-called fallen angels are literally throwing the bird at the human race's grimy fate of living with giants after Lucifer, the leader of the fallen angels, infamously tempted Eve, which caused the woeful downfall of men. That Michelangelo names the giantess in his painting Sibyl demonstrates the fact that Michelangelo understood his human-angel hybrid to hold special occult powers, since a Sibyl is a prophetess. These tribes of giants practiced the dark arts and were idolaters, murderers, and soothsayers, and they received their prophetic information from the dark side. Curiously, the base word for Vatican itself means fortune tellers, which to me could imply that the vulgarities and secret clues in these works were simply commissioned accoutrements to the images. After all, historically, anyone who defied the Pope in any way was in danger of losing their head, and the gesture being made by one of the angels behind the back of the Sibyl was equivalent to flashing one's middle finger in anger today. Michelangelo's contemporary artist Vasari, who had done some fresco painting himself, marveled at the way Michelangelo had held up physically through the long ordeal when Vasari stated the following in his book, Life of Michelangelo. He executed the frescoes in great discomfort, having to work with his face looking upwards, which impaired his sight so badly that he could not read or look at drawings, save with his head turned backwards, and this lasted for several months afterwards. I can talk from personal experience about this, since when I painted 5 rooms in the great apartments of Duke Cosimo's place, if I had not made a chair where I could rest my head and relax from time to time, I would never have finished, and even so this work was ruined. Work so ruined my sight and injured my head that I still felt the effects, and I am astonished that Michelangelo bore all that discomfort so well. The countless clues and rude gestures in Michelangelo's Vatican works appear to be quite a deal more than a simple nose thumbing at the Pope, who supposedly had ordered the painter to complete this grueling work against Michelangelo's wishes. Either way, when it was all said and done, his work amounted to around 14,000 square feet of brilliance. This all sounds nuts, I know. But if you have ever heard of the band Incubus and Googled the meaning of this creepy word, you will realize that people still believe to be honoring this age-old practice of mating with demons. Below is the Google definition of the word incubus. Incubus, noun, a male demon believed to have sexual intercourse with sleeping women. The painting of the Cumaean Sibyl, Lady Giant, on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel is but one of countless examples of clues hidden in Michelangelo's reluctant Vatican works, which should no longer be ignored. It is a shame that endless volumes on this topic are filled with meaningless words of fiction, since there are so many wonderfully obvious clues hiding in plain sight in architecture, artwork, print, and song. This paper will be written based on veritas alone, so we will leave well-structured theory to agents of confusion, the Dan Browns of the world, and you and I will move on in truth, which, as you will soon see, is far more compelling. In this work, we will explore the following burning question: are the giants already back? Every culture cited legends of winged beings, ancient giants, and an epic flood. Perhaps the giants for which the world was destroyed by the great flood have returned. Moving forward in the text, we will see what this means for the human race. Angels. Along with documenting the existence of giants in our past, the Bible, as well as architecture and folklore around the world, suggest that these Nephilim genes could also manifest as bird-like features in the human gene pool, a trait of their fallen angel parents, as in the case of Nebuchadnezzar, who we will study in great detail later. In this biblical account, Nebuchadnezzar, famous king of ancient Babylon, himself began growing these bird-like feathers and claws. Images and stories depicting these anomalous creatures, today referred to as avian humanoids or simply as birdmen, are found on ancient stone reliefs and tablets all over the world. The many and vast archaeological sites of ancient Babylon are littered with stone depictions of beings with angel-like wings whom they referred to as the Anunnaki, which literally translates to those who from heaven to earth came. The Anunnaki, referred to as the gods, Babylon means gate of God. Roman emperors were said to be demigods, half man, half god, fallen angel, just as were the giants described in Genesis. The pharaohs did the same. In fact, beginning with King Nimrod of the Tower of Babel account, also said to be a giant, the Babylonian kings, the Hindus, the Chinese, the Japanese, I could go on and on from nearly every patch of land, even from the ancient Norse Vikings to the present-day Rocket Man of North Korea, all thought they were descendants of the gods, the fallen angels. When Charlie Sheen famously snapped, he proclaimed himself to be an Adonis or god. According to popular belief, Adonis was the son of Thais, king of Syria, and Myrrha, also known as Smyrna, who was a god or a fallen angel. Below is a crazy short list of Charlie Sheen claims during his moment of greatness. Number 1, I got tiger blood, man. My brain fires in a way that is, I don't know, maybe not from this particular terrestrial realm. Number 2, I'm tired of pretending like I'm not special. I'm tired of pretending like I'm not bitchin'. I told a freaking rock star from Mars. Number 3, I'm sorry, man, but I've got magic. I've got poetry in my fingertips most of the time, and this includes naps. I'm an F-18, bro, and I will destroy you in the air. I will deploy my ordnance to the ground. Note, Charlie's father, Martin Sheen, was the star of the 1979 cult classic Apocalypse Now. The soundtrack for this film includes a classical number by Wagner. His work, sometimes called Flight of the Valkyries, the official title being Ride of the Valkyries, was played in the scene in which an air cavalry regiment played the song from helicopter-mounted loudspeakers as a form of psychological warfare and to excite American troops during an assault on a North Vietnamese-controlled village. This scene is ironic since the Valkyries were originally fallen angelic beings who obeyed the commands of Odin, the Norse name for King Nimrod. The imagery for this scene uncannily corresponds with Sheen's aforementioned quote 3, where he strikes as an F-18, bro, and he will destroy you in the air. Now, I'm sorry I repeated that one sentence once. But I'd like to point out that in my first of the Vegas Exposed series, I actually played this song in that video, which is about these fallen angels in the version of the story of Odin. And this one is partly for comic relief, but another part of me wonders if perhaps there are legends which have been passed down through Sheen's famous bloodline, and the amazing list of stars and powerful Hollywood figures who were reaching out to Charlie at his moment of instability could substantiate such a situation where Sheen began to risk the reputation of an entire counterculture of people who pass on these same beliefs in modern times. So was Charlie simply the one who had gotten away? Below is a list of groups found all over the world who incorporated these angel-like bird gods into their legends. And you don't need to memorize the information. I'm only demonstrating a theme which appears to be far more than coincidence. The Tangata Manu of Easter Island, often depicted as a frigate bird, a human hybrid Valkyries, possibly connected with Freya of Norse mythology. Angels in all Abrahamic religions, these are the benevolent angelic beings mentioned in the Bible. Anunnaki, winged gods of Ansu, Zu, Sirius, and Lamassu, Shidu from Babylonian mythology. These are the fallen angels detailed in the Bible, in which the Anunnaki were the enemies of angel and man alike, whose offspring produced giants. Libraries of records, the thousands of stone tablets found in Babylonian excavations, verify these accounts from the dark side of Scripture. Alkanost, Gamayun, and Sirene from Russian mythology. Ekek in Philippine mythology is depicted as a humanoid with bird wings and a beak. Farvar of Zoroastrianism, a Garuda, eagle man, mount of Vishnu in Hindu mythology, was pluralized into a class of bird-like beings in Buddhist mythology. The gods Horus and Thoth from ancient Egyptian mythology were often depicted as humans, with the heads of a falcon and an ibis, respectively. Huitzilopochtli, the left-handed hummingbird, god of the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan, I can't pronounce that, Tenochtitlan, the Kanara and Kanari in Southeast Asia, who are half human, half bird. Karura in Japanese folklore. Lei Gong, a Chinese thunder god, is often depicted as a Garuda-like birdman. The second people of the world in southern Sierra Miwok mythology is reported by Barrett. Hermes and his counterpart Mercury in Greek and Roman mythology are usually depicted with sandals and a helm with wings on it, and sometimes also with bird-like wings. Icarus, legend from Greek mythology. Wayland the Smith, legend from Germanic mythology. Nike, Boreas, Eros, and the Gorgon sisters from Greek mythology are all depicted with bird-like wings. Also the Sirens and Harpies were often represented as half human, half bird. Many of the Native American Indians of North America have legends of birdman hybrids. Countless tribes adhere feathers to costumes and perform magic dances which have the potential to bring rain, among other fulfilled desires, which are granted by their feathered gods. This one is interesting. The feathered serpent is a supernatural deity. The feathered serpent is worshipped in much of the Mesoamerican religions. It was called Quetzalcoatl among the Aztecs, Kukulkan among the Yucatec Maya, and the Cucumats, and Tohil among the Quiche Maya. This one is mind-boggling since Satan originally appeared in the Garden of Eden as a serpent, combining the image of Satan with that of the birdmen of the Anunnaki of ancient Babylon. These amazing tribes of stonemason giants who worshipped birdmen seem to have been all over the world. They all just had a slight twist on the same ancient Canaanite rituals, building pyramids, worshipping in themselves, becoming the sun gods, and killing their own kids. From cannibals deep inside the jungles of New Guinea to the Egyptian pharaohs, to the Roman emperors, to virgin-tossing islanders who sacrificed people in volcanoes, they all worshipped from these pyramids, aka towers, or other high places, as the Bible calls them, where they spoke to the gods. It all began with King Nimrod, inventor of the pyramid and the first evil king and so-called god of the entire world. The Bible threatens a time-worn scam. It reveals an ancient secret for which the veils are about to drop. No matter what you believe now, prepare to discover for yourself why the dust on your Bible, the best-selling book of all time, holding the answer to every mystery in the universe, is so thick. End of quote, end of chapter. So you got to understand now why I wrote a whole book about building pyramids, worshiping birdmen, and killing people at these pyramids, human sacrifice, and that's the opening chapter of my book, and talking about these giants, these so-called giants, and how they weren't all really as big as we thought they were, because, as I mentioned in the quote, that shack is taller, many inches taller than what the King James Version of the Bible says, that Goliath, whom David slew, the giant whom he cut his head off, that shack was actually taller than he was. Now, amazingly, when I got back from discovering all the witchcraft in Delano Tower, the tower right behind the tower from which the gunman shot, another golden tower on the property of Mandalay Bay with all these scrying mirrors which are for talking to fallen angels, and I found all these art installments by J.K. Russ, a form of the name Russell, Russell being the surname of the family, the Yale family who formed the Order of Skull and Bones, and on and on and on. To my great surprise, when I got back from this amazing trip to Las Vegas, which formed the whole Vegas Exposed series, which if you're starting to dig this and you haven't seen Judavision before, you should just go start it right over on the Vegas Exposed playlist and just let it rip right through this show. But I want you to know, when I got back from writing this thing and question, or from the Vegas Exposed series thing that started Judavision, it really kicked it off, that I ran back into a buddy who kind of knew what my projects were about, and he's also a big fan of Jeopardy, as we both are. And he was telling me about this amazing question on Jeopardy that he watched, and it spoke of this mistake on a stamp, with Franklin Delano Roosevelt on it. And the mistake is supposedly that on his left hand, and the whole narrative was that FDR was this amazing stamp lover and on, but in this stamp, that the artist who had made the stamp and drawn the likeness of FDR supposedly accidentally drew on his finger, or his left hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fingers, which, again, in my first chapter of the book Back Upright, here again is the quote: "In this work, we will explore the following burning question: are the giants already back? Every culture cited legends of winged beings, ancient giants, and an epic flood, and perhaps the giants for which the world was destroyed by the great flood have returned," I asked. And moving forward in the text, we will see what this means for the human race. You might want to go out and buy Back Upright and see what was in that book, but what's more interesting now to us looking back is that when I went and saw Delano Tower stuck behind the tower from which the gunman at Mandalay shot, I realized again, that it's called Delano Tower, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt is also who added the pyramid with a lighted capstone onto our $1 bill. And then, as you know from watching the show, if you have been paying attention, you also know that the Luxor is that same pyramid, and that this was predictive programming, and that Franklin Delano Roosevelt, as we learned in the last episode, was a Knights Templar who were known for predictive programming. And again, we showed in the last episode how I was attracted to Mandalay Bay even before the shooting, because here we have Russell Road on the bottom, sandwiched, and then Mandalay Bay sandwiched between this Russell Road and Delano Tower at the top. And again, here's Delano Tower right behind the tower from which the gunman shot at Mandalay Bay. And again, I want to remind you, Franklin Delano Roosevelt added this pyramid, which we now know as the Luxor. Also, in the last episode, I mentioned that Delano means swamp or swampland, and I want you to notice that in this supposed seal underneath this pyramid, this is a swampland, because we see the flowers coming up out of a swampland, which is a good for a reflection, as we saw in the seals of Solomon. That signifies scrying, but it also signifies Franklin Delano Roosevelt, since his middle name, Delano, means swamp. And again, his family was a dope dealing family that kicked off the first of several dope dynasties. If you've ever read my book, Hitler's New Shower, you know what those dope dynasties were, which led up to OxyContin and now buprenorphine or Suboxone. And again, in the bottom of this tower, Delano Tower, you see that it's the Franklin Bar. Here's the menu for Franklin Bar. Here's Delano Tower. Here's the witchcraft, which initially tipped me off to that there was something strange going on in Delano Tower. And as you can see, these mirrors pointed at the black ceiling with candles on each side are identical to the witchcraft that you can read in books like this Mirror Magic book. And in the bottom right, you see this final mirror, which has a message still in it, creepily across from the elevator towers, from the tower, again, right behind from which the Golden Tower from which the gunman shot. And you also know, if you've watched the series, that I found a bunch of bird people paintings and art installments in the bottom of Delano Tower. A lot of these were reflective in these mirrors, showing these bird people darkening the skies, as it says in Isaiah. And we're going to do a great Bible study in the next couple of weeks that shows that everything in Delano Tower puts a lot of Isaiah into context for us. And I've talked about this in prior shows. Look, you can also see there's the eagle. In this art installment, you've got the eagle on the far right, and that's the eagle that's on the seal of Solomon from the dollar. On the far right, you see there is the owl from Bohemian Grove, and we've seen these falcons represent Hathor, the forerunner to the sun god, and Amun-Ra in ancient Egyptian in the book of Thoth, and we've seen these themes run on and on. Look, and here's the installment that's actually in the elevator lobby. This is the one. In the next couple of slides, we'll see this smoking knife clue again. Here's these bird people again. And remember, I wrote about these in a book before I even visited this installment. So imagine my surprise when I get to Delano Tower and see these bird people across from a pyramid. And I'm talking about the giants being back, and they're not as big as we all thought they were. And again, remember, when I get back, I see this stamp. My buddy tells me about this 6-finger stamp of Delano, telling us he is one of these giants that I'm asking about. Are they back? In the first chapter of this amazing book, there are things to be learned in here. It tells of this cycle of the sun god rising through all the cultures and how they were all predicted in Bible prophecy. That's what this book was about. Amazing thing. Now look at this red arrow points at, I'm going to show you the smoking knife clue, as I called it, by J.K. Russ, this Russ family. This left entrance, this black block underneath the arrow, that's the elevator lobbies. This is the elevator lobby to the tower right behind Delano Tower on Mandalay Bay. And again, now look, I want to show you something I haven't showed you in the previous shows, but look how the lighting in the back tapestry on the wall, if you just see how the lighting from the ceiling flashes on the wall, it's formed as a big eagle, kind of fluffing his feathers, his wings. onto the painting, which is amazing because this is all about this eagle rising on the $1 bill on this Solomonic altar. As we've learned, Taco Bell, the Illuminati commercials tell us how to fold it up into that. Here's a closer look at that left side of this tapestry, or this art installment of this amazing Hathor, the only bird person in this art installment that has anything in her hands. And this one has that amazing knife, Hathor's knife in her hand. Now look, this is what's across from that installment, and you can actually see in the left side of this mirror, black mirror, you can see the reflections of the elevator doors in this lobby, and on top of the mirror they left this white inscribed message that says, "Don't wait, the timing will never be just right," implying that they needed to go through with this now. And they've got all the imagery of their votive painting work right here in the lobby. Look, here is the mirror, and here's what's you see in the reflection of the mirror, the actual doors of the elevators in this reflection that says, "Don't wait, the timing will never be just right." And then across from this mirror, here is what is this little smoking knife clue in the hands of Hathor, which again, if you read the ancient Egyptian so-called mythology of the pharaonic rites, Hathor brings about Sekhmet, who comes and kills all the people. When Sekhmet was a big lion, and we know that right across from the paddock in which these people were shot, there was a big lion, and people come into this bowl where it's like a bowl of blood, and it's a lookout over the paddock, you guys. Here again is the brass plate in this installment, J.K. Russ, a form of the name Russell. Russ means red, Russell means red. The Order of Skull and Bones family. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now look at this. I just want to show you one time these amazing tribes of stonemason giants who worshiped bird men seem to have been all over the world. They all just had a slight twist on the same Canaanite rituals, building pyramids, worshiping in themselves, becoming the sun gods, and killing their own kids. I wrote this before I even went here, you guys, and found that this is what they were doing. These aren't the themes of casinos, you guys. These are all of Satan's empires, and the temples thereof lined up next to each other, a celebration of this. And now we've got human sacrifice combined with these so-called theme casinos. It's all it is the same thing that's repeated itself over and over again. And I wrote about it before I even went there. From cannibals deep inside the jungles of New Guinea to the Egyptian pharaohs, to the Roman emperors, to the virgin-tossing islanders who sacrificed people in volcanoes, they all worshipped from these pyramids, aka towers or other high places. Delano Tower, as the Bible calls them, where they spoke to the gods. It all began with King Nimrod, inventor of the pyramid and the first evil king and so-called god of the entire world. We can no longer ignore this stuff, you guys. And here we know Delano Tower was depicted with 6 fingers, just like the giants in the beginning of my books, which definitively answers our question, are the giants already back? We now can say that they are. And as I quoted in my book, every culture cited legends of winged beings, ancient giants, and an epic flood. People, perhaps the giants for which the world was destroyed by the great flood, have returned. Moving forward in the text, we will see what this means for the human race. People who have been watching the show know what this means for the human race. The shows from here forward are going to be really cool because we're going to start connecting these things with the Bible. If you want to get ahead of class, you should read this book back upright. It is absolutely amazing. It's amazing what I saw and what I was writing about, what God led me to write about before I even was compelled to go to this property, you guys. I literally was sent to this property. It was the strangest occurrences, and eventually I'll show you the video of these security guards throwing me out, and I'll decode their tattoos and things, and it's going to blow your mind how this all ties together. Subscribe to Judah Vision and tell your friends and family about Judah Vision. before it's too late, for we are in the twilight of truth. I thank you all for watching the show, and God bless.